When we two parted. Hi, my name is Olivia, and Jinya and Kyle are my teammates, and we are going to introduce this poem.
Lord Byron is writing this poem after breaking up with married woman Frances Wedderburn Webster. There's evidence of that in places like line 13, thy vows are all broken, or in line 25, in secret we met. When Lord Byron refers to thy vows, he does not just mean between the two of them, but also between her and her husband. She was one of the women Lord Byron fell in love with, and Lord Byron wrote this to become reminiscent of this forbidden love. It was written before the woman was discovered cheating with someone else at the same time. I would like to imagine how Lord Byron felt. The speaker is from the perspective of Lord Byron himself.
The theme of this poem is love, and it is mainly about heartbroken, looking from a future retrospective point of view to consider that the relationship of two secret lovers were like after long years. The significance of this theme is that the lines entail a lot of emotions and imply many untold stories left to the reader's imagination. For example, in line 27, the heart could forget, or the title When We Two Parted, show his recollection of the emotions he left when they'd broken up. As human beings, we know that we will love people, but sometimes we don't get the love back, and I think that's mainly what the poem is trying to talk about. It is showing how two lovers cannot love each other anymore, and they've broken up and leaving two people. Well, if the background was like Jinyao said, he left Lord Byron with another man, then maybe Lord Byron was the only one that was heartbroken.
You can see what she's talking about in lines 8, 16, and 27. Sorrow to this, and share in its shame, that day heart could forget.
This poem gives off a tone of emotional pain and realization. The feeling of thought and growth is what I feel when I read this poem. It connects well to the theme I identified because we often reflect on our relationships and reflect our roles in them. And we reflect through the washing of our emotional pain.
This tone can be shown by places like Half Broken Hearted, or It Felt Like the Morning, or In Silence I Grieve. The tone of, oh, I'm so sad, like I can see it.
The imagery that I found important in my construction of my poem, that I observed in the poem I built after, were senses, rhyming, and metaphor. So the senses that I observed was like line 10's sunk chill on my brow, which is the sense of touch, and line 18, a knell to mine ear, which conveys the sense of hearing. I believe that the senses help convey the feeling of emotional pain and realization. As for rhyming, I found that every word in each line rhymes, and I think there's the significance of that I'll explain later. For metaphors, I observed pale grew thy cheek and colder thy kiss. The temperature of the kiss symbolizes the relationship and how he felt about them parting. At last, I want to talk about a knell to my ear, in line 18, as I mentioned. A knell is a funeral bell, so the purpose of the metaphor is to convey the feeling of death after hearing a young lover's name. The form of this poem is A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, and it has 4 different stanzas. The formatting is quick and casual, and I think it makes it sound like a natural thought in your mind, and thus is more immersive. The poem is 32 lines, and it uses older English by using words such as thy or thee that we do not commonly use now. I think I want to implement all of these into my poem.
We can go back here and see these lines.
Okay, so when I read this poem, I first felt a lot of heartbreaks and feelings like you can't get the person you love to love you back, which is very heartbreaking. And from what Lord Byron describes a breakup is like, you can feel it when you experience loss of love. You can relate to it, and you feel very comfort.
The feelings on the poem can be summarized as Lord Byron relationship didn't work out, and sometimes when two person don't like each other anymore, they just part away, and it might be for different reasons, but clearly Lord Byron wasn't really happy about it. Reading the poem, I myself felt of the difference in moral thought back then and now. Because when I'm reading it now, I'm thinking, oh, Lord Byron's getting mad that the woman that's cheating on her no longer wants to go on dates with her. But I now understand that in the historical context, because marriages were so political, they were often forced and they didn't actually have meaningful relationships. So because of that, I think that's why Lord Byron was so sad about it, as compared to now when I'm looking at it from the modern side. I consider more of how it was complicated and probably whiny, but that's the difference in historical perspective that I observed.
The imagery that I found important in my construction of my poem that I observed in the poem I built after were senses, rhyming, and metaphor. So the senses that I observed was like line 10's sunk chill on my brow, which is the sense of touch, and line 18, a knell to mine ear, which conveys the sense of hearing. I believe that the senses help convey the feeling of emotional pain and realization. As for rhyming, I found that every word in each line rhymes, and I think there's the significance of that I'll explain later. For metaphors, I observed pale grew thy cheek and colder thy kiss. The temperature of the kiss symbolizes the relationship and how he felt about them parting. At last, I want to talk about a knell to my ear, in line 18, as I mentioned. A knell is a funeral bell, so the purpose of the metaphor is to convey the feeling of death after hearing a young lover's name. We also decided on a A-B, C-D, C-D rhyming structure with 8 syllables each, because I think that's also parallel to Lord Byron's choices, and it makes the poem feel like natural thought and natural language. And I find that to be very interesting. At the same time, it also makes it easy to listen to, and humans strive for the rhythm, and I think using this structure creates that rhythmic feeling that makes listening to poems very pleasant. The poem we wrote goes as follow. I feel like an uninhabited canteen, like a chubby half-full bottle. That's what it's like to be a teen. Our life still stays so full throttle. My canteen sits on a table, an internally empty desk. He picks it up, me unstable. Burn temp, I feel, death Venice-esque.
Life is like a bottle of juice. We need to squeeze our time out, working with no extra excuse. Living and fighting, do not shout. Sitting in a room till noon. Tick-tack, the time fastly counts. Do things that we care about soon. Choosing your pathway and be proud. The empty, slumbering hallway. Time flow through feelings corridor. A voice echo through the walkway. No shade with the cemented door. Sitting down, though, the passage of time. The hour passing, counting o'clock. Tick-tock, time is up, overtime. Waves flock, the shaft, knocking the lock.
I'm inspired by the varying perspectives us as different humans could write a poem together. We got to all weigh in our thoughts on teenage life, and the title is I Feel Like, because I feel that,
as I mentioned earlier,
be a natural prompt, just like when we two parted. Like,
I think we were able to express ourselves.
when you're trying to explain how you feel, you can be, I feel like, and then like the poem comes out. I think that's similar to when Lord Byron could have used When We Two Parted. Like, when we two parted,